YouTube, how's it going? The Goat House is back just after the 2022 Senior Bowl. I'm here at my stock report, winners and losers, mainly focusing on those positives. Who really helped their stock throughout practice and the Senior Bowl game? We're going to talk about maybe where those players were in terms of draft range before and where they are after. We'll talk about some potential draft fits, which teams they fit as well. So a lot of players to go over. Again, this is based off not just the game, the practice as well. We have full NFL draft coverage. Right after I get done with this, I'm going to start to work on that post-Senior Bowl updated mock draft. A lot of changes. Really excited about not only our draft content, Super Bowl content, free agency content. Love covering free agency as well. So join us. Like, subscribe, turn notifications on. Check out our Patreon is linked down below. We got some new off-season content coming to that. More to come, of course. Check out our Twitter, constant live updates, rumors, predictions on there. There's links down below, pinned in the comments, all the important ones. Help us out. Much appreciated there. Yeah, here's our Twitter at GhostNFL. A lot of updates. We were talking live during this game, every game. We got you. So check it out. Again, links down below. Obvious one to start. Malik Willis, the quarterback from Liberty, pretty much was a big winner because of practices this week. We did see him in the game. But yeah, coming into practice, he's 6 feet tall. That's a little underwhelming. His class is a little on the shorter side, but he's got that build to him, of course. That's fantastic. We knew he had the legs. Can he be? And he was a pass-first guy in the NFL, but we want him to continue to be that pass-first guy. Sometimes these guys end up being a run-first guy because they just want to escape. They're, panicking from the NFL pressure. But during the practice, he's showing some things that really that stand out. That again, we knew he probably had the best legs out of the guys, for the Senior Bowl, but for him to be the most accurate, and there's a lot of strong arm guys there. Again, we knew he had a strong arm, but for him to show the strongest arm at the practices with his accuracy, that's what really stands out. These things that we're not really sure about, does that stand out? He's being the most consistent guy at the practice. That stands out. You get to the game, he's the starter. That's a good sign. And you see him use his legs. If I want to nitpick here, I wish he would kind of threw the ball a little more instead of using his legs. But in a real game, in those situations, if there's no one's open, you use your legs in those situations. And we saw what he can do, avoiding tackles, making people miss. And you see the velocity on the ball too. Actually broke some records during practice, some Senior Bowl records on velocity on the ball there, which was pretty interesting. It's interesting that they track those things. We saw on kind of the sideline throws kind of across the field in the game as well. Didn't get to see a whole lot of him in the game, but the practice is where he made his money. So before he was these quarterbacks were all kind of in the same area. Really, you can pick out about 3-4 guys that can be QB1. He was probably in there, but more towards not being the first quarterback taken. Now, different story. Goes for him, around that top 20 range. I put top 9. I got pretty specific there. I look at the Broncos picking 9. And, of course, all these teams won't be picking in their current spot. But I would think teams that if they were to trade up for Malik Willis, they'd probably have to jump the Denver Broncos. And who knows, Denver Broncos might have a franchise quarterback before the draft. So it could change some things. More teams could be involved. But I look at teams that could potentially draft him. We could start talking about the Lions at pick 2. Am I saying it's going to happen? Not necessarily. We could start to move him in that conversation. He fits today's era, today's NFL. The strong arm quarterbacks that could move, and kind of everything else is a bonus there from that part. So really, Malik Willis just doesn't have, I guess, the height, and he's some learning to do. Understanding coverages, reading defenders, just reading defenses in general. But he could be that first quarterback taken now. So I think he'll be picked inside the top 9. We see some potential fits, some teams that need a quarterback. Some of those teams would have to trade up. We hear the Steelers are very impressed with him. They would have to move way up, and then it brings up a whole other debate. Is it worth the Steelers trading away a lot of picks to get up from that 20 range there? We'll see. Moving on to another big winner, Jermaine Johnson, the pass rusher from Florida State. Former last chance U standout, and then was at Georgia. Didn't really play much there at Florida State. Had a big-time breakout year. It started week 1 against Notre Dame. Really put some good things on tape in that week 1 game there. And then coming into the Senior Bowl, he's kind of known as one of the better prospects. I think people were starting to call him maybe the best defensive prospect coming in. And then once he started to put some things together in practice, everyone's like, okay, this is the best prospect here for sure. So before it was like borderline first round. There's some talk about him being in, out, kind of borderline, top 32 pick, kind of in that range. Now he really boosted his stock. I mean, I'm going to call him a top 12 pick. I think there's some really good fits there. Some teams that need pass rushers. We listed quite a few of them kind of around that range, in and around that range there. But yeah, fantastic pass rusher, really good bull rush. Showed some collection of moves and one-on-ones during practice. Of course, he's got the athleticism, has the length. I think he has the ability to play either scheme too. He's kind of more built like a 3-4 outside linebacker edge rusher, but you see him put his hand in the dirt, and he's love to have that bull rush in there. It just shows the power that he has, and he's put that out on tape at the Senior Bowl, but practices, but during the year, which is more important. So I really like what I saw from Jermaine Johnson, and just kind of really good reports, from scouts, and it sounds like he's going to go high. Question is, could he have put himself in that conversation with, maybe we're reaching a little bit, but Aiden Hutchinson and Kayvon Thibodeau? Is he, those guys are likely to go before him, but is he in that conversation there? Has he hopped over guys like David Ajabo, George Karlaftis? I'd say, yeah, maybe. Ajabo, maybe a little more of a debate there between him. But I think he's hopped some guys there for sure. And again, that top 12, top 15, he can go in the top 10. I think it's pretty realistic. I mean, you look at the Falcons at 8. He pass rusher's pretty bad. And this has got to get to the quarterback. I guess you question why wasn't he playing much at Georgia. Georgia's got a bunch of studs, but found a good fit there at Florida State. Again, he had a heck of a week. People calling him the best player at the Senior Bowl. Zion Johnson, offensive lineman from Boston College. Categorizing him interior offensive line. Really like him at guard. I think he'll be a day one starting guard in the NFL. He did play tackle in 2020. He went from guard in 2019 to tackle in 2020 at Boston College. Played pretty well there. And they just really needed him there, But back to, 2021, we know he's best at guard. We know he's got NFL talent. We can help his stock out. Boston College put him back. Who usually has pretty good offensive linemen. Put him at guard. Really good season. And then we saw him work there. And then, but center as well in the Senior Bowl practices, and he was very, very good. I love the offensive line versus defensive line one-on-ones. I'm not a huge fan of receiver, very entertaining, but receiver cornerback one-on-ones doesn't tell us a whole lot. Receivers should win pretty much every time. It kind of could tell us a lot from corners if they really shut things down. But I love those one-on-ones from the big boys. Zion Johnson had himself a week, showing out in the game as well. But I like the versatility. I think teams, because offensive linemen, they're starting worthy offensive linemen. It's very rare in the NFL. It's why the good ones are rarely free agents. It's why you rarely see guys traded, because they want to hold on to what they got, and there's a lot of injuries up there in the trenches. But then, so having a guy that can play guard, you're going to start him at guard, but hey, if a tackle goes down, we don't have too much depth there, but hey, we got some depth behind Zion Johnson. Let's move him to tackle. He's got some experience, so let's move him to center. I love that, and teams will love that. So he was kind of pretty much in the same range as Jermaine Johnson, like kind of talked about top 32 in the first round, that is. So, half and half kind of. Is he, late first? Is he an early second? But now I think he's locked himself in the first round. I'd say top 15. I look at the interior class here. It's not the greatest. I mean, you got a guy like from Iowa, Tyler Linderbaum, who wasn't in the Senior Bowl, but a guy that's more of a center. We think he could be a very good guard. But usually the good ones are pretty interchangeable. But now you feel a little more safe with a guy like Johnson here, who can come in and start day one at guard and has that versatility across the whole offensive line. So top 15 pick. See some teams that need these things, pick him within the top 15. Man, I really look at the Giants, the Panthers, and the Falcons. Those first three teams. Could they pick them where they're at? We see the Giants got 2 picks. They're all picked inside the top 8. Actually, the Falcons pick 8. Could they move back a little bit? I mean, again, pretty thin on these types of players in the draft, I'd say. So do you just get your guy here? So I can see that. So I should be a first-round lock in my opinion. He made himself some money there. Trevor Penning, another offensive lineman, was starting to get some first-round talk, but another guy, it's like some people had him easily in the first round. And some people were like, you know, kind of an under, probably because he's from Northern Iowa, under the radar guy, so kind of was known as a top 50 pick, kind of averaging it out. But another guy that I really think is a first round lock now. He's going to be a tackle. You know, I think he played left or right. He had really good showing in one-on-ones in the drills, and nasty blocker. Seen him kind of want to get in fights. Maybe that's not for everybody, but you like that type of dude there. Maybe relax, pull it back a little bit. But yeah, another guy, you know, could he have passed some of the other tackles? You know, definitely not Ikwonu or Evan Neal, but, you know, some of those other guys in the same range, you know, I think he could have I think he could have hopped over maybe a guy like Cross. That's kind of where he's at now. You know, Penning and Cross kind of in the same range of the middle of the first round that could sneak up in the early parts of the first round. There's some teams up there, some similar teams listed that could use that offensive lineman. I think a team like I think he fits the Ravens. I think a team like the Steelers, I think, really fits, and that's a guy they would really, really like, in my opinion. Do they have to move up for him? Could they sit there, and could he fall to him? It's going to be pretty close. Really good showing for Penning. So a couple of these offensive linemen here. A couple of these defensive tackles really stood out. Travis Jones, we were talking about him earlier in the week. Yeah, was absolutely dominant in practices, one-on-ones. We saw him in the game. He kind of created a sack, doing the same thing that he did in practice, really just driving his opponent, the offensive lineman, from just straight back, you know, because just outworking him, just outpowering him. And I like that we kind of see the same things, because practice, it's great because there's so many reps and it's a week full of practice. In the game, you only get so many reps, but you put on the pads, you kind of get that game setting, game atmosphere. You want to see it match up, and I like that we saw it match up there. But we saw a lot of him in practice, and kind of an under the radar guy because he played at UCONN. I think he was playing there because that's his hometown. I think he's a very good football player. It was kind of talked about in the 4th round range, maybe sneaking in the 3rd. But I mean, this guy had himself a week. I like the versatility. You can move him around. I mean, you can line him up at nose on passing downs as well, but line him in around the B gap. Obviously, defensive tackle. But yeah, I think teams are going to love this kid. Love the strength, the power on him. So I think he'd be a top 50 pick, which sits in the middle of the 2nd round there. I think he can go in the 1st round. I think it's very possible. And just some teams you see there that could use defensive linemen. That, yeah, a lot of those teams are kind of later first. Could they pull the trigger on him later first there? Yeah, really like some of these teams for him. But yeah, could slip through maybe a little bit, but he's one of the biggest winners. That's why he's on here. One of the biggest winners of the week. I mean, just see the raw power on the kid. And another one, pretty much the same situation. And this was actually the Senior Bowl MVP and Perrion Winfrey from Oklahoma. It's pretty much the same situation. More of maybe a 3rd round guy, maybe a little bit bigger name playing from Oklahoma, but I think he's a top 50 pick. Could very well go in the 1st round. Won the MVP of the Senior Bowl. Again, I love that he shows out in practice. I love that he shows out in the game. Here's the topper. Here's the big thing on why he really made some money, is because this is a defensive tackle that, I mean, Oklahoma would play him in a D tackle, B gap a lot, would line him up around the nose tackle area from time to time. They move him around a bit, versatility, but where he was very good at Oklahoma, pretty good at getting pass rush production from the D tackle position, and that's great. Everyone, not too. There's starting to be more. We're getting more and more every year, but the big boys, the interior guys, can get after the quarterback. But the problem was, can he help stop the run? Is he just a pass rushing D tackle? I thought he did a fantastic job closing out gaps and holes here in the Senior Bowl game. I think the game where he kind of elevated and showed that he can help stop the run as well, that is huge to me. So he could sneak in the 1st round. I like his versatility a lot because he has the pass rush moves to, I mean, even slide out to like a 3 technique, which is out on the outside shoulder of the guard. He can line up over the guard, D tackle. I mean, he can line up at nose on pass rushing downs as well. I like the versatility that he can move around. So kind of a high motor, nasty dude. So really helped himself. So see some similar teams that could use a guy like that. For sure. I'd say Travis Jones, maybe. And I think both these guys fit either scheme, really. I was going to say what they would fit. I think they could fit either scheme. Very good players. Could one or both sneak in the 1st round? It's kind of the question right now. And they have the opportunity there, and they kind of showcase what they can do and why they belong there. Rachaad White, running back from Arizona State, caught my eye. Actually, this is kind of an in-game one. Not so much practice, an in-game one. He caught my eye. Running really hard, breaking tackles. See him kind of get in the open field. I like the length. I like the size on him. He's got some good length. Not too many running backs at that 6'1", 6'2" range. Good length, but you see the power as well. Doesn't run too high. And you put out some pretty good runs in the game, and it kind of caught my eye, and made me kind of dive in on this guy a little bit more. That's a good thing if you're doing that. Just in a game where you don't get too many reps, it's a good sign, obviously. And then pretty productive at Arizona State. We know he can run the ball. We've seen that, but pretty sneaky catching the ball out of the backfield and downfield as well. The way he moves and parts of his game, I don't want to get a full-on comparison here. I'm not a big comparison guy, but I guess the way he moves, almost laterally and then kind of getting upfield, and how he's sneaky catching the ball a little bit, but nowhere near as thick, and he's powerful, but nowhere near as kind of thick and powerful. But James Conner a little bit. Again, don't want to get a full comparison, but because he's not really the same player, but there's some similarities that I saw there a little bit, and having a bigger back, again, not as big, not as wide. Not as powerful, but that can do different things. So I saw a little bit of similarities there. Day 3 pick, not too much on him before, but I think he'd go in the 3rd round. I think there's some teams that kind of can get a little bit of a crush on a guy like this, that kind of a bigger back that, again, can catch the ball, breaks tackles, got the vision, kind of gets going in that open field too. We saw there wasn't too many holes today in the Senior Bowl, run blocking wise. But there was one, and it was for White, and he really found it and hit it and was pretty good in the open space. There's some teams that I really like that. I like the Falcons, pair him with the guy like Cordell Patterson, possibly. The Dolphins could use a back. That's really why they're in there. Could this be maybe like a Latavius Murray for the Saints, who they kind of missed this year a little bit, to pair with Alvin Kamara? That kind of rung a bell for me there. Texans could use a back, of course. I don't like the full comparison, but there are some similarities to James Conner, who's a free agent. Could the Cardinals, maybe they missed out on him? Do they get a guy like White? And the Jets could kind of use a bigger back to pair up Michael Carter. It kind of makes sense to me there. So some good fits there for White, who had a pretty, not too many guys usually make themselves big winners from the game. So that's a pretty good sign there for Rachaad White. Another one, BOYE MAFE, edge rusher of Minnesota, just purely from the game. I mean, he was all over the place out there, the Minnesota pass rusher. Not a big name before, maybe a day 3 guy, probably 4th or 5th round before. Could be a 3rd round pick now. I kind of like him more as we saw him get his hand in the dirt more like a 4-3-M, but his build, his athleticism, kind of maybe more as a 3-4 outside linebacker pass rusher here. So there's some of those teams. He could fit a lot of teams. I just kind of threw some teams in there that they had to be fits for me to put him in there. And in that range of the draft, they had to kind of make sense. But there's a long list of teams you could put for some of these guys. I mean, he had a really good Senior Bowl, really getting after the quarterback, beating the man in front of him a lot. So he was another guy that kind of really stood out during the game. A lot of these pass rushers standing out. And then you got JALEN, who stood out both in the practices and the game. This is kind of I'd say, a strong safety that can play in the box and the slot a lot. But I like instincts. When I see a guy and I can see he has instincts, he has the ability to kind of read the quarterback at the same time of playing the whoever he's covering, really, whether it's tight end or receiver. That really stands out to me. So not really a big name guy. I mean, Baylor's defense is pretty damn good, but not a popular guy before. Maybe a 4th round pick, but I think a top 75 guy. There's teams that really love these types of players, which there's not too many of them that come in every day. There's more these days, I'd say, but I think the Colts actually stood out to me. They got 2 good safeties there, but they just hired Gus Bradley yesterday. It seems like a Gus Bradley type guy. You kind of move him in from, maybe in the box a lot, have him in the box a lot there. That kind of made sense. And, the Colts going from more of a cover 2 split safety now to kind of go in cover 3, where you have a free safety over in the middle third, and have a guy kind of roaming around the box a little bit. So that made some sense. Steelers, could it be a guy to pair up Minkah Fitzpatrick? Washington, maybe move on from Landon Collins, who's kind of almost that type of player, but more just a linebacker, This is that type of player they want, but he's really more of a coverage guy. So it's kind of almost an upgrade. It's hard to say he's an upgrade over Landon Collins, but for Ron Rivera's defense. The Texans could use a pair of safeties. The Chiefs, Tyrann Mathieu, maybe he's not coming back. Here's a potential replacement there. And then the same thing kind of with Kareem Jackson with the Broncos. Possibility that could be a replacement. So some fits there that kind of made sense to me. But yeah, he really stood out in, again, both the practices and the game. One-on-ones, he stood out. The defender, if you're standing out in a one-on-one as a defender versus a receiver, that means something. Receivers should win those reps pretty much every time. But he did a really good job of just staying sticky with the receiver or tight end, but just keeping his eyes on the quarterback too. That kind of stands out to me, and making play on the ball too consistently. In a corner that, I didn't really see him stand out much in the game. I didn't notice him much in the game. That's all right. Practice really, really stood out. Another one-on-one guy that stood out. If you can lock down receivers in one-on-ones, it's big time there. But he maybe didn't have to do anything to stand out because, this kid comes in, you get the measurements on these kids, the accurate measurements. Usually the team rosters aren't accurate. They add a little bit. But this is a lengthy corner, goes about 6'3". He's got the long arms, and they're able to measure speed. They're tracking guys, miles per hour, how much they're running. He's one of the faster guys there. TARIQ Woolen as well. So all that comes together, and he's showing out one-on-ones. He's able to be physical. He shows the ability that maybe he can play man coverage on top of that length. That really stands out. These defensive coaches drool over these types of guys that, I don't really have to come in. I don't have to teach man coverage because I can't teach man coverage. I don't have to teach length because you can't teach length. You either have it or you don't. I want to teach everything else with these types of guys, the upside. And that what really stands out. So kind of a under the radar guy, day 3 pick, maybe even around like 5, 6. Now you kind of think he's going to be a top 100 pick with that upside for sure. And there's some corner needy teams that kind of will look for that type of corner that could be physical, can play man, but they like the length as well. Some of the coordinators in these different team spots kind of stood out to me, or they just really need a corner. So yeah, he kind of stood out. Could it be that late riser like playing from Texas San Antonio? I remember, L'Jarius Sneed from Louisiana Tech, kind of just kind of a riser at this time of the year. Look at the combine, and you like his length and his speed. And you see the upside, and then he ends up being something with the Chiefs. Kind of, even when the Chiefs took him, it's kind of an under radar guy. Could it be that kind of that smaller school? Texas San Antonio, a pretty good school actually, but on the smaller side. But yeah, really stood out during the practices. And then a list of other guys I really want to talk about here. Some big winners still, and we see who's pictured. Desmond Ridder. I like what I saw from Ridder. We get to see a whole bunch. I think they named him Offensive Player of the Senior Bowl, so that's big time. Did he really move his draft position? He was kind of talked about maybe early second, maybe sneaks into the first. I think it's kind of the same thing, but I still think stock up. In terms of draft position, maybe his stock didn't go up. Maybe it did. Maybe he's locking himself in the late first. Maybe in the later back part. Maybe the team like the Titans in the back part of the first. Maybe that's the ceiling there. And I don't want to cover everything. I just realized it wasn't on the screen. But so maybe the draft position his stock isn't up. But what I like here, what I was a little worried about Ridder is, he started for 4 years, and he was kind of a one-read guy the whole way. Sure, he made improvements in terms of his production and his arm strength and his athletic ability, and he got his team to the playoff. But what I kind of noticed is he was kind of a one-read guy the whole way. But you do sometimes wonder, is it just the offense? Is it the play calling? Did Cincinnati make him a one-read guy? But it's rare that's the case. And if maybe Cincinnati would have stepped outside that box by year 4, so you start to doubt that he can be more than a one-read guy. But I saw him step outside that box today in the game. I saw him kind of go through and scan the field a little bit and go to another option. He probably had some of the best throws today. There wasn't too many great throws from the Senior Bowl quarterbacks in the game. I thought he probably had the best throws today. So again, stock up, not really because of his draft position. He's probably in the same spot. Probably maybe help himself a little bit. But in some things that maybe we doubted him a little bit on. Really had a good showing on the play action. So those teams that run a little bit of West Coast, a little play action offense. Yeah, I think that's a pretty good fit there. And then kind of going up at the top to Sam Howell. Again, draft position, maybe it did help, but I'm kind of thinking my draft position because I was kind of probably a little higher on Howell than maybe the rest of the where everyone was saying he would go. So maybe in terms of where everyone else was kind of late first, early second maybe. His stock's probably up in terms of draft position from them, but I really was firm on middle of the first to early first perhaps. But I liked, because what we know about Sam Howell is he's a lot of things Malik Willis. He's not as athletic as Malik Willis, but he can run. He's a strong runner. He's 6 feet tall, so he's a little on the short side. He has that strong arm. He has the arm talent, things we know. We need to see some other things when it comes to this pre-draft process. Show us you can do other things, like show us some pocket awareness, show us the ability to play under center, show us the ability to kind of scan the field and go to second or third option, and he actually did all of those things in the game. I like that a lot. He put together some pretty good drives. It sounded like a big-time stock up, so why wasn't he in the first group of guys? He did, there was a negative. He did put the ball on the ground twice. He was rushed pretty early on those, and most guys would have dropped the ball in those situations, but you would like for him to hang on to the ball there. But he did some things where we were kind of wondering. Both him and Howell and Ritter did some things where they were kind of the question. So I like that for both those guys. So stock up. Kingsley Enagbare, the South Carolina pass rusher, mainly standing out in the week of practice. And measurements. You see him come in, a very lengthy pass rusher. Everyone loves a lengthy pass rusher these days, obviously. But we see the upside with him because he's kind of he's lengthy, juiced up type of guy, pretty strong, somewhat of a freak athlete for sure. But yeah, is he an NFL pass rusher now is kind of the question when you watch him on tape. Does he have the moves, the pass rush moves? And I thought he put that together in some one-on-ones in the week of practice. So that helped him. Logan Hall, defensive line from Houston, yeah, he was really good in the one-on-one. Still the question with him is where do we play him? Where do we play him? Because there's always those Houston guys, the Houston defensive linemen. Ed Oliver, they had Ed Oliver at nose tackle, and they had Hall on the inside as well. But, weighing about, was he 270, 275, kind of lean. Where do we play this guy? Is he a 3-4 end? Is he a 3-technique defensive tackle? Is he a 4-3 end? So, could he be versatile here? So that could be there could be positive, negatives in there. Where do we put him? But he was fantastic in the practices and one-on-one. So I thought him going out and showing that, I'm a ball player, I think that helps. Greg Dulcich, UCLA tight end. He had a pretty good week of practice. It's tight ends usually in the Senior Bowl are pretty tough, and I don't want to overreact too much from the one-on-ones. He was getting pretty good separation in practice. That's good. For some reason, tight ends seem to be just a big difference in a combine or drills or practice atmosphere versus the game. I've noticed that from tight ends in this process and in the past. So I don't want to get too much overreaction, but he had a pretty good week. One of those tight ends that definitely could separate. D'Angelo Malone was one from the game that I thought really stood out. This is kind of an undersized pass rusher from Western Kentucky coming into this, but he didn't really, he didn't play like he was undersized in the game there. So he was a guy that was kind of making an impact there within the game. I have some neutral stocks here, and what you may say, why would you put neutral guys in here? And I'm going to tell you why. Well, Kenny Pickett, because there's kind of movement within no movement, because Kenny Pickett kind of came into this week. Maybe is he QB1? Maybe did Malik Willis take it? Kenny Pickett comes in. People worry about the hand size, which does matter. I think people overreact from it. Doesn't get his hands measured. It's because he's double jointed, which is not a good thing. And then people do worry about him wearing the glove. What happens if it rains? And then, the gods bless the Senior Bowl scouts with some rain on the second day of practice. And he did have some struggles pushing the ball downfield when it did rain a little bit. And you do worry about his deep ball arm strength as well. So you see there are some negatives in there. But then you do get some positives because he was 100% in the game. We didn't see a whole lot of them. They voted him as the best quarterback on the team. The players vote for that. So you do see, there starts with some negatives, but then you see some positives. So there is kind of some things there that pop up. Even though I think overall stock stay neutral, he may have got hopped as for a quarterback one. He wasn't my quarterback one as it was, but I think he was most people's. Then Dameon Pierce, running back from Florida. Yeah, his stock hasn't changed for me. I thought he was a day 2 guy, really fun guy to watch, really tough runner. We kind of see that. More people get to see that, and you start to see, he can fit here, there. So people kind of get to realize that Dameon Pierce is a guy that you should talk about more in terms of the running backs, a pretty deep running back class as well. So I do think he solidified himself as a day 2 guy. Devontae Wyatt, the defensive tackle from Georgia, who it didn't really change for me, too. It was kind of probably a late first type of guy. It didn't really change for me. He had a really good week of practice, then he got injured and was unable to play in the game. It's a minor injury. He's going to be fine, but that's where your stock really can't go up because that happened. So that's something notable. And then a couple stock downs. Yeah, Carson Strong, quarterback, Nevada. I watch him on tape, and I say this guy could have the best arm talent in this class. He's got that deep ball. He's got the ball placement. He's got some really good red zone balls there as well on tape. And then you get to practice, and you see the arm strength, but he's a little wild with the ball, missing some throws, and he already has the negatives of the lack of athleticism as well. And you get to the game, and the game didn't really match up on the game from Nevada on film. Like, I didn't really see the arm. There was one play where he stepped up in the pocket, let one sling, perfect ball. That's kind of the arm talent. But overall, he had a severely underthrown ball. I should not see that from him. They end up being intercepted. So some things just not matching up. Not the best week of practice. So Strong was kind of a guy like if his knee checks out, he's probably a first rounder because his arm talent. And now it's if his knee, hopefully his knee checks out. If it does, he might be a second round guy still because of the lack of athleticism and he gets a little wild with it. Ability to throw outside the pocket really not there. So his stock kind of went down. And Daniel Falele, the Minnesota offensive lineman, that was starting to get some buzz heading into the Senior Bowl because how big he is, how lengthy he is, and he put some good things on film. But his stock went down a little bit. One-on-ones, we talked about a lot of pass rushers that really stood out. And he was kind of getting caught off balance a lot. There's some balance issues, and that tends to happen with the really taller guy, the bigger guys. And so that kind of happened here. And there's some talk about, do we move this guy inside? I don't know how I feel about him. I guess I'm thinking about his build too much. If he can play inside better, if he can play better inside, then I guess he could play better inside. But I don't know if that's really a good sign that we're, do we move this guy inside? So he was starting to get some first round buzz. I was never really on board the first round, but if there was any of that, I think it's gone. I think he dropped down a little bit, but maybe some upside there. But where he really stood out in tape was kind of getting downfield. That next level blocking. If there's a run, kind of outside run, getting downfield, and that's impressive. Not too many offensive linemen can impress in that way. But how is he, protecting the pocket? I think people were kind of looking too much at one thing a little bit. I thought about putting Bailey Zappi in stock down because the inability during the week of practice and the game to really stretch the ball downfield really showed. This is draft position because he wasn't really thought highly of, in terms of his draft position before. So does his stock really go down? A lot of schemed up thing at Western Kentucky, which resulted in a lot of production. I mean, he's got pretty good ball placement. I think he's a pretty smart quarterback. Just can he really push the ball downfield? Not really there. Doesn't have that velocity, which a lot of these guys do have the velocity. There's no star quarterback. There's no standout quarterback. And it is considered a weaker quarterback class, but there's some guys that can play. I think there's a pretty common theme here. I think we got some guys that are pretty athletic and they have strong arms. You look at Sam Howell, he can run. He's a strong runner, pretty athletic for how thick he is. Strong arm. I mean, Desmond Ridder, pretty damn athletic, got a pretty strong arm. And Malik Willis definitely fills those categories. And then Carson Strong has a strong arm. He doesn't really have the athleticism. Kenny Pickett, maybe he wishes his arm's a little stronger. He's more of the balance out of the group. But I think, Howell, Ridder, Malik Willis kind of in the same boat here. So we see a lot of movement here. A lot of guys stock up. The quarterback class is so intriguing. Didn't Malik Willis bump himself to 1? Howell showing something. Howell and Ridder, Ridder's not going to make it up to 1 in my opinion. Who knows? This quarterback class is pretty tight. But Howell and Ridder showing some things that we kind of questioned. We wondered. That's pretty big. It's one that I'm starting to think, maybe bigger stock up than we realized. I don't think their draft position really changed that much though. I think it just, and maybe it has, just because they showed us some things that we haven't really seen. The question with Howell is, how is he under pressure? Can he run different types of play styles? And then Ridder's, can he get outside the comfort zone of being kind of without the one read plays? So those are kind of the questions there, but long way to go. We got the Combine coming up. Cannot wait for that. We have you covered the same way for that on Twitter and on here. And then we have Pro Days and we have the NFL Drafts First, we got free agency, though, so I can't wait for all that. We have you covered. Actually, first we have the Super Bowl. Have you covered for all of it. Like, subscribe, turn notifications on, and join us for all that. Important links pinned in the comments there. So check that out. All that would be much appreciated. Let me know your guys' thoughts, your risers and fallers in the comments there. It'll be pretty cool to see everyone's different opinion. A lot of other guys we can always talk about, too. We talk about a lot of guys here. There's still a lot more. But that is going to do it for this one. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.